It's the Wednesday Wisdom Show, and you need to know what kind of prayers get answered. To look at that, we need to also ask, what is a prayer, and what would we consider to be an answer to that thing that we're doing? So in terms of our societal understanding of prayer, we see it as a request made to a higher force that we don't have direct access to, but we concentrate the expression of a need to this force with the expectation that if we reach a level of sincerity or follow formulae that we receive from our traditions, that there will be or there can be a response. And then it's a question of whether or not the upper office is not too busy today to take a look at what's being asked for and respond to your particular request. And according to our culture, to our religions, to the way that we've been taught, this involves a soul trying to connect or reconnect with the essence of that soul. We have a concept of where our soul is and what it is, and that whole conglomeration of things goes together into the question of prayer and getting an answer. So let's start with this. We think of our soul as being something that's inside of us. Maybe it's the animating force inside of the body, something like that. And we think that it's a secret spiritual place that exists inside of us, and it's this that speaks through us and is searching, asking, and requesting. However, Kabbalah says that the soul does not exist within us. The soul exists in the others around us. That is, we are bound up with all of the people that we see outside of us, and they are disowned parts of ourselves. They are actually desires. Desires are the building blocks of life. And these are disowned desires that we can work with when they appear to be external to us. We've got this function like a camera that projects our inner qualities out onto a screen, an external screen. But it's far more dimensional than that. It also allows us to actually work with them, because in our relationship with these external desires that we call people, friends, enemies, whatever they are, in the relationship with them, what connects us, or the quality of the relationship, that's where the healing and reconnection and connection to our soul, the building and establishing of the soul, actually occurs. It's all an internal process, but it seems to us to be an external one. All right, so the person who is praying is also a disowned part of this general soul, and sent to the darkest corner in which we experience ourselves as an individual, asking on behalf of what? Praying on behalf of what? The kinds of prayers that never get answered are individually focused prayers. I'm in trouble. Help me. Don't let this disease eat me up. Don't let such and such a thing happen to me. Take me out of a situation. Help me study for this exam. Help me be able to, and you can fill in the blank. Now, the reason that even though these things may be truly needed by that thing that perceives itself as an individual, prayer is not necessary, because we are bound up with all of the other pieces externally, because that's where where it all exists for us. And that is connected into a large system that is being managed by a quality called the Creator that is taking care of every single part and can manage the entire well-being of every single part for the ultimate good over the widest expanse of what we may think of as time, but it's actually the development of a correct desire and relationship. We experience those things as time. So even if a person prays to be helped, they're going to be helped anyway. The problem, of course, is can they recognize the form that help is taking in the immediate response of nature or their surroundings, the next thing that happens. Do we see it as help? No, not necessarily, because we don't have this scope that shows us the connections in the larger system because we don't identify with the larger system. So if a person prays and they receive an answer to a personal request like the ones that I described, their prayer was not answered, or at least they were not taken care of by the action that they called prayer. They were taken care of by the general system, which in its quality takes care of everything. And this is an unconscious process for us. We didn't really engage in that at all. It didn't matter what thoughts we felt, what emotions we felt, or what we expressed. What mattered in that case is that this force, thought behind the entire system, took care of us and is always taking care of us. Now, what about other types of prayers? What about when we get together in, say, a religious community, and we're all sitting in a church or in a synagogue or mosque, and the group is praying? Well, now this depends very much on, one, what is the ideal of the group? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to identify with and feel the force that guides the entire system? And by the way, are all of them doing that? And even if it was so that the whole congregation ascribed to this same ideal, which, by the way, religions don't ascribe to that ideal, but we'll get to that later, it would depend on whether the individual was also doing that at that time. Because what has to happen in a true prayer is that it has to be aimed at the right thing, which is the correction of the relationships between all the people so that they resemble how forces of nature are actually arrayed, as I explained before, in order to help every part of it. Do they think, feel, and are they selfless in the same sense that the force that binds and guides all things in nature is? If the individual in that congregation is still focused on themselves, then that entire group of people is not praying. That doesn't mean that that group doesn't have a connection to the larger loving force that manages everything. It's just that they are not doing what prayer is and are not achieving what can be achieved through prayer. That is, they are also only receiving that general care that the Creator gives to everything. Okay, so I'm still not speaking about the prayers that get answered, but even in that situation that I described, where even though it is a group of people, it's still fundamentally not the request of the soul, because it's coming from individuals. There is a more or less effective individual prayer. That prayer would be to help this separated part feel and understand what the Creator actually wants of me. Help me understand your actions towards me that I take as good and bad, or that I either accept or I rebel against. Don't take these things away from me. Show me how there is good in this. Show me how I can rise to understand what it is that this event, this setback or this good event, is actually trying to direct me to. Let me understand how you love me and every part of the system in utter humility, in utter hiddenness, in utter smallness, and make it so that it's possible for me to even feel myself as separate, desire all these things. Don't change the world for me. Show me how I can change and become reconnected to my soul. Show me how to connect to what my soul really is, to others, by understanding how you care and think about others. That type of an individual prayer is effective. It doesn't matter where it's done. It doesn't matter if it's done alone. It doesn't matter if it's done in a congregation that's not going anywhere and that isn't really a spiritual collective. So now we can begin to look at what is an answer. The answer to a prayer can only be that thing that is the quality of the Creator. The answer to a prayer can only be what binds creation together and looks after it for the good. And that means that it's always requesting that we change and that we rise to its quality. In other words, change me. Change me so that I can be like you. Not so that I become great, but just so that I can further understand and that my understanding will turn into an action. The system, the love behind the system, immediately responds to that because it was waiting for that. Because there wouldn't have been an opening for it to be able to give you that until it became a need in that individual lost, separated part of the actual soul. Now, the real, most effective prayer that is always answered and is beyond answered, but actually gives access to the place where all the goodness of the answer to prayer comes from, is a prayer called the prayer of the many. And this is a prayer in which a person and a group of people are not asking for their own development. They're asking that all of those so-called people that they see outside of themselves, that is really the soul in its separated aspect and waiting to be reconnected and corrected, when the request from every individual in that group, which holds the ideal of the reconnection of the soul to its actual source of love, coherence, and total care for everything, the good that does good to the good and the bad. To live like this, if every individual is praying that every other individual can actually reach this, and that the action and their desires are aimed, their request is aimed at the whole, regardless of what happens to them. Because in any case, being a part of the whole and identifying with the entire congregation, let's say, or circle, spiritual circle, means that whatever good there is will not only come to everybody, because there's actually no separation there, but it also gives access to everybody in that circle to the place where the good comes from, and they become part of the delivery system of the good. Their quality, their shared quality, is one and the same with the quality of the holistic nature of reality. So they actually give to everyone. Everyone's prayer is answered, and all in all, the soul ceases to be external to the people who are praying, to the individual, so-called individual that was praying. And the individual leaves that individuality and enters into the life of the soul. It doesn't do away with the body. It doesn't do away with the externality of appearance of separation. But life then, the answer to the prayer is that we live life above the rational, and from the spiritual view, irrational, appearance of how life and reality works. And we enter into the governing aspect of this. We're part and parcel of it. We're no longer incarcerated in our individual egoistic bodies, which is an inner aspect truly, and not the apparent physical thing, because the physical thing isn't real. That's when we actually have a soul. That is what we should be praying for. That is the answer to the prayer, and it is always answered. But it has to be the kind of prayer that is the same as the thing that the Creator wants to give us. It's not a simple matter, and I hope that I've explained it in such a way that you can get a kind of a sense of what it is, if not, a much more clear picture. And if you have questions about this, then please put them in the comments. Comment any way that you see fit, and like, share, and click on the notification bell.